Stipko Live, welcome back to New York City. This is one of those shows that brings yet more poise and class and elegance, if I may, to our show here at Stipko Live. Karin Coonrod is joining us, an amazing director, but we'll get to that in a minute. I actually want to read this CV. Her bachelor's from Gordon College, master's in fine arts in directing from Columbia University, postgraduate work in medieval literature, which I love that. I love that you can do postgrad. That's not swords, that's just that speaking of swords and
that's right.
Gutting and the twisting and the stretching of the torture.
Beowulf and Chaucer.
Right. And now faculty member at Yale.
Yes.
How does that work? Are you actually teaching or?
Yes, I teach the directing students in the second year at the Yale School of Drama. So Shakespeare.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, no, well, I don't have a PhD. I just have a master's in directing.
What do you mean, just? You're only teaching at Yale. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but it's a studio class. I mean, we talk about Shakespeare. We talk about text, and we put stuff on our feet. And the students are working to be directors. You know, and so. It's different. It's a seminar that's about once a week, and sometimes I bring actors in. For instance, I'm going to bring 2 of the clowns from Love's Labour's Lost in this week.
Love's Labour's Lost, Shakespeare's piece, of course, that you're directing. This is certainly not your first time you've directed it. Do you know it by heart by now?
Do I know it by heart?
Yeah,
no.
The whole thing, no.
No.
But you definitely know if there's a wrong line or something.
Pretty much, yeah.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
Which I want to ask you about that too. The budget and money and time frame. I understand from our good friend who you've directed, Patrice Johnson.
Yeah.
She said that your actors had, and we're going to talk about your actors as well, 4 weeks rehearsal?
Yeah, a little less. We actually began rehearsal on the 19th of September and went in front of preview audiences on the 18th of October. And then we opened on the 30th of October. So we previewed, which is also always the process of the public, that they preview for a long period of time. It's you know, experience has brought them that, so that the press just, they come in at a certain time, and you know it can be really for audiences, and then the press can say what they want to say eventually. But then it closes soon after that. So it's a lab production, so it's not a very it wasn't. What
does that mean, lab production?
Well, you know, it's not a main stage. So it's a production in which the values of the money that's thrown at it, basically production values
or
of
lack
money,
thereof,
is very limited.
Now I saw this just I don't know, about a week or so ago, and we had very nice seats, and I'm looking at basically a piece of indoor-outdoor turf. For lack of it, it was like a green carpet, literally.
Yeah, like a green quad.
2 pillars, green quad. It was about 40 feet by 40 feet, something like that. 2 giant pillars, and that's it, pretty much. I don't think there was anything else. And you know, when I see your name and it says a play by,
it's not by me. It's by Shakespeare, but I directed
of course, I know.
So
that.
I write this in the space. This is the way I like to think about it, that when I work with a text, whether it's a classical text like Shakespeare or Molière or Lorca or whoever, or a new play, you know, I'm working with a lot of Romanian stuff right now, also working on a Chuck Me piece, a lot of different things. They write on the page and I write in the space. So that's how I like to think about it, that I do the writing too, but in the space. And I need the freedom to be able to take that text and make it work and live and breathe and be vital in the space. So excising words sometimes if necessary, if they don't work, if I feel like, you know, this is too long, it's not going to work.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, it is bold. It's extremely bold.
Yeah, I mean, you know, excising Shakespeare,
that's right. I did quite a lot.
That. And I saw that I know that there was some incising, is that a word? What's the opposite of excising?
Well, yes, there was a little bit of ad-libbing. Yeah.
You injected some text, and it was comically fantastic.
Yeah,
you know, I loved it.
And I didn't, you know, those are ad-libs by those clowns. For instance, you know, when Stephen Skybell, who plays Holofernes, says, "Oh my God,"
Right.
you know.
Right, right. Obviously not part of it. And so,
Right.
was it, there was like some Britney Spears dance or, what is that? New
Yeah,
Kids
there
on the
was
Block or something?
there was that.
In Sync.
Yep, that's right.
And there was a Beyonce bit that they did. And
Just a little quotation.
yeah, I mean, tiny. It was,
Yeah, very tiny. I mean, I think it's the text is very sly. In its day, it was very sly.
Right.
Shakespeare was a wit who, I mean, people have all kinds of opinions about who Shakespeare was and where he was educated or not,
Right.
or that Shakespeare, in fact, wasn't Shakespeare. Some people think. I am one of those who believes. I'm old-fashioned. I think that he lived in Stratford and, he went to school until he was 15 and just was an amazing listener,
Right.
An extraordinary miracle writer. I think that's possible. Whitman is the same way, So Whitman is our American Shakespeare.
Sure.
So, he made fun of the writers. He involved, for instance, the sonnets. The Petrarchan sonnets were very famous at that time, and Petrarca was an Italian who was earlier. And then he made these sonnets that were very, very romantic, very, dedicated to Laura, very romantic, very, lots of eyes, lots of tears, lots of this kind of thing. The King, I don't know if you remember, the King's sonnet is, it's full of eyes and tears, and in fact, it's very self-reflective in some sense, because he sees himself,
right.
and he's basically feeling sorry for himself. So Shakespeare's making fun of the Petrarchan sonnets. But he's so sly and funny and sharp.
Oh, yeah.
And we, because we struggled, well, we didn't struggle that much, but I mean, the actors want to be funny, I mean, they know, and yet they need to live inside of the passion of these characters. So they can't judge the characters. They've got to live inside what it feels like to have that passion for somebody. And so even though you're making bad poetry, maybe, so the King, I suggested to him, knowing that he was a singer, I said, why don't you just get to a point where you just have to start singing,
I love that. I love
Who played the King, who is one of the four, he's the one who started the boys' club, basically.
Oh, right, okay.
And he reads a sonnet and then starts singing, and starts singing in falsetto,
Right.
that moment where
So
he says, "Oh,
fantastic.
Queen of Queens."
Right.
So he has this amazing voice that
really good
he just, and every single time we performed this, he got applause. He got applause every single time, and people laughed at that moment because it just became extraordinary. He executed it beautifully.
Yeah,
I mean,
and you're
lived
moved.
inside of it.
You're moved as well as you're laughing,
Yes.
and you're crying, and I guess that's what Shakespeare has a tendency to be able to do.
Yeah, and so just to go back to those references, I think that it's very sly, or it makes a text live if we can slyly refer to, anachronistically, I might say, to the cultural things in our own time.
Right. Sure.
Not to replace or not to, but it has to be very sly. It has to be very tasteful, and I feel like, things come up, and I just know if it's right or not, or just test it anyway.
That's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
I mean, they've made some errors in religion and things like that, where they're changing, prayer books and Bibles and such. So
Right.
I would imagine Shakespeare's pretty close to a religion to
Yeah.
many.
But the words are the same.
Yeah.
The words are the same.
Well, you
except
excised some, you
Yeah,
injected a
right,
few, a
right.
little improv.
a little bit of with the clowns. Yeah.
I thought it was a perfect balance. I loved the mix in this performance.
Thank you.
You spoke briefly about budget and finance, and
Right.
because it limited your rehearsal time,
Right.
it limited the stage. You're
Right.
in, I guess what you call the lab, so it's not the
Right.
main stage. It's
No.
sort of the upstairs or downstairs,
Right.
which I thought was fantastic. By the way, it was huge.
It was great. I love that space.
Perfect sound,
I think it's
perfect
gorgeous.
everything.
Yeah.
There were very few props. There were a few masks that you used, a few trinkets that indicated who was who when they were doing this whole identity swap. Obviously, I'm not going to retell the story. I'd hack it. But I was so entertained by the fact that this whole story was kind of being told using clowns and riddles and,
Yeah.
almost like a Faulty Towers bit, you know, and that's so Shakespearean, isn't it? I mean, doesn't he? He always does this. He's using clowns and
he wants to appeal to a wide mass of people. You know, the groundlings, those who would just get who would have the belly laughs, and then also those who would have a laugh more up here, you know, and then try to mix it. I mean, that's what I love about him. I just love that. He had a mass of people there, and they all loved it. You know, it's a huge gift, and I've wanted very much to kind of allow a text to live in such a way that kids, and one thing that made me, kids and adults and people that know Shakespeare and people that don't know Shakespeare or have never seen or heard this play before, would all come into it and appreciate it. And, you know, I think we did that because, which was really thrilling. I wanted to make a piece that was an American Shakespeare, a piece that created an ensemble within, you know, this short time frame, and a piece that rocked the room. You know, I wanted to go into that space and make sure that we really utilized every corner of the space, that it wasn't just, you know, on stage, something that we could be far away from and adulate or worship, you know, but rather that the audience would be taken into the entire event and feel a part of it, so that, because I think that that's what it's about, you know, and especially in this time when theater is, it's very, very tricky to get money for theater. It's perhaps of the arts the most chaotic and crazy, the wild child of the arts, because...
Why do you think that is?
Why that is because when it's over, it's over. There's no document. We have no documentation of this except for about, you know, 50 pictures. That's it. We don't even know, you know, someone could say it didn't happen, you know, except that people know it happened because it was written in the wind. It was written in the hearts of those people. And if you trust that the word goes deep, and if the actors are really, really mining the words deeply, the audience will be infected by that and will take it away with them. And I believe that there's something very deep and very long, you know, very enduring, even eternal, you know, about it, actually, about the thing that really is deep and really goes there. But there's no, because there's no thing to put on a wall or a book to take out of a, you know, no plastic, it's no film, it's not a book, it's not a piece of music that you can read. There's nothing. And so
can't
people...
be bootlegged.
No. So people, you know, are very hesitant to support it. Right. It's the first that goes, you know. I mean, it's very, all the theater folks know this. I mean, this is really a struggle. It's a huge struggle right now in this time. People give to to things that are evident, you know, but not things that are time-based and then are finished. So, you know, but I believe that it's the most important because it brings everything together in a way that if that could have run, I mean, it should have been seen by thousands more, actually, because one night there was a group of NYU students, about 90 kids there, students, they were 19 and 20. Only one person had read the play before. Many of them had never seen a Shakespeare. They were very nervous. I gave a talk back afterwards. They were nervous about seeing it because they thought, oh, it's going to be one of these, you know, some guy lifts his arm and then he starts warbling. and I said, no. And they said, we didn't know Shakespeare could be like this, you know, and it was just thrilling. I said, well, this is great, you know, this is fantastic. And they stayed and then they wanted to talk about it.
Right.
And they wanted, you know, they were encouraged. I mean, they were theater students, 19 and 20, but some of them had never seen Shakespeare.
Right, right.
So, you know, the city is full of that, you know, but we had audiences that were mixed. That's what made me very happy.
To the left of me was a very elderly couple.
Yes.
To the right of me, the entire variety, right around me, every single one of them was riveted. And this was 2 hours plus with no intermission.
Right, exactly.
Which I thought, okay, I'm thinking no intermission. You know, 10-year-old in front of me, we got problems.
Yeah.
You know, no bathroom runs, nothing. The kid was riveted.
Right,
you know,
fantastic.
as were the people all around me. Yeah.
That is so great to hear. I'm just thrilled, and I saw it too. I often sat when the press came. I sat up in the balcony so that I wouldn't be seen. I didn't want to be.
Right, right.
It was just embarrassing to be in the house.
Another thing, you spoke about really immersing the audience and putting them in the same headspace as the performers and the performance itself as an organic whole. So often that can be really gimmicky. You have people running up and down the aisles, and it's the follow spot and the whole thing. It's like, ew, this was so not that. I mean, it was like, I felt like I was, every other audience member, for me anyways, and for Darlena, every other audience member was invisible. They disappeared.
Yeah,
and it was, what is it, 8 or 9 on stage?
Yeah.
And she and I, and that was it. With those, you weren't even there. It was just the 10 of us, and we were hanging out with Bill, and it was just
great.
Yeah,
I
it was
love
fantastic. That. There's a character. Forgive me,
That's all right.
I don't know the names that well.
Sure.
She was sort of the saucy one.
Oh,
didn't have a lot of lines. Yeah,
Giaquinetta, Italian.
Right.
Yes, I wanted to base her on a Fellini, like Serafina.
You nailed
had to be definitive.
Casting. I want to ask you about that. First of all, it was briefly was budget a concern with casting?
No. I worked with a very good friend of mine at the casting office with whom I'd worked several times now.
I don't mean hiring a casting agent.
No,
I mean, did the actors say, well, I need more dough, and did that limit who you could bring in?
No, I don't know all the details about that, but we did a long, I was working on casting all through July and August.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty intensive. Actually, it was about a month, middle of July, because I came back from Europe. Yeah, we started about the 12th, and we're working for about a month intensively. I wanted to cast the lovers with very young people. I didn't want to work with more seasoned actors that I knew would have been, fantastic on the text. But I wanted to have young, sexy lovers. I wanted them to be and I said, okay, I'm going to work with them on the text. We're going to work. And they were all trained. Right. So they had that training. And some of them had had some experience of a few years, after school. Right. But they were young. And that was fun. That was great fun. And then the clowns were people that I'd worked with before. Some of them were just offers. Right. Like to Stephen Holofernes, we've worked together several times. We're very close. And so and in fact, we even did a workshop of the clowns of this play 2 years ago. And he had done Holofernes then, and I said, I just want you to do it, and he accepted. And then Armado, that was an offer too, the man who carried the stick, Reggie Cathy, who's glorious. We worked together too, Shakespeare, and then Francis Jew, who played the priest.
Right, fantastic.
We worked together.
Great voice as well.
Beautiful.
Nice piano player.
Oh, yes.
Tiny piano.
Yes.
One of my favorite characters or actors in the piece, actually I should say one of my favorite casting choices in the piece was Robert Stanton. Right? What was his character's name?
Well, he played two. He played Boyette and he played Doll.
This voice, it's like Midwestern or...
Yeah. When he played Doll, it was a kind of Texan.
Yeah, it was Texan. To hear, Shakespearean dialogue in that, the whole thing, I was just like, whoa.
He was worried that maybe it wasn't. I said, no, it's just fine.
Oh, no, it was perfect.
It was great.
Perfect. Yeah. That was fantastic.
Absolutely.
It's bizarre that in 2011 I have to even ask this question, but I want to ask. I walk in and I see a predominantly African-American and I think there was only one Caucasian in the entire production, maybe two.
No, there were a few Caucasians in there, but not that many, yeah.
It's bizarre to me that I don't see more plays with more color. Right. Plays of this caliber. I mean, there's, why are Shakespearean plays or classics, they seem to be so limited, at least in my, layman's perspective.
Right. Often, I think... what often happens is that there are a few token folks that are brought in because people feel the necessity of doing that. I just don't think that way at all. I haven't thought that way for a long time now. Because to me, we live in New York. It's a joy to feel the mix of people. And it's a joy when our mutual friend Patrice went to Orvieto 3 times with me, and we brought, to do the medieval mystery plays, speaking of medieval literature, and a whole crowd. I mean, it's a joy to kind of introduce the American what it means to be great in America is to embrace these differences that we are, to embrace our immigrant roots, you know. And so what is that? It's not, you know, who came over on the Mayflower? A few people, but, you know, who are they? I don't know, you know.
Right, right, exactly.
I don't know, you know, what we are now in New York. I mean, it's just so much joy, you know, to be able to say, no, I want these people, I want a group of saucy, sexy, I want this crowd to really, we want to laugh.
Oh yeah.
And you know what?
nailed it.
It's actually more fun. It's the most fun thing when you really mix it up. Otherwise, it gets serious and head scratching, and people are worried about, you know, and it's just ridiculous. I don't know.
Did you consciously intend to cast a very diverse?
I wanted it. I wanted it to be that way. Yes, I definitely wanted it to be that way, because of who we are as Americans, because of wanting to create an American production of Shakespeare, because of the opportunity, you know, all around us to be able to do that. We live in New York City.
Sure. Hello, culture.
Oh yeah, and it's just it's a total joy.
I think it's more than just culture. I mean, there's such a societal and cultural and political message. Speaking of which, you're going to run for office or something, right? I mean, you're going to do something with your aspirations here, just theatrically. I mean, what you just said alone would probably solve, you know, 90% of our problems if you were someone like you was in office. I mean it. I mean, you look at what's most of our problems in the world. I mean, right now they're absurd. It's bizarre that we're having that. Anyways,
yes, I know.
Don't get me started.
Yes, right.
Do you have a political position on anything? That you care
I
to
want to
share?
re-elect the president, so I'll just say that.
That's the beginning and the end of it.
Yes, I definitely want to re-elect the president. Yes, and I would love to be able to. I wish that he and his wife could see this play, but you know, one day, who knows?
Right.
You know, I'm sure a lot of people, you know, they're invitees to many productions.
Right. Okay, so we just finished Love's Labour's Lost a day or so ago. Thank God I caught it in time, thanks to Patrice. What's next for you? Where can someone see the next Karin production?
Well, let's see. I'm doing something actually next week on at the Green Space. I'm doing WNYC, Ernie's Incredible Hallucinations, with 4 of the company from Love's Labour's Lost. They're going to put on English accents and do an Alan Ayckbourn play. The next thing that I'm doing then is going to be at La Mama, and that is in February. It opens on February 16th and closes on March 4th, and it's inside the 50th anniversary of La Mama Theater, which is pretty exciting actually to be a part of that. Yeah. And it's a play called I Killed My Mother. It's a play. That's a play?
I know, that was a journal.
Everyone's got a quip when I say that title, right? It's really funny. But I did it in Chicago in 2010. And it had 5 stars. It was really well received, and it basically Victory Gardens in Chicago in a little tiny space. We are now redoing it, the same company, in La Mama Theater in February of 2012. And is
there a website or something we can direct people to?
I think. It would be actually it's with a company called Theater Y as in Y, Y.
All right.
And it's a great play because it's written by a man called Andras Viški. He's a Hungarian Romanian. I've become very good friends with him in the last 3 years. Wow. Since 2000, yes, 2.5 years now, very close friends. I've directed that play and another play of his called Juliet, which we are now going to also do in Italian and possibly in French. I Killed My Mother is going to be, you know, in New York, in English.
Quip overload, I'm sorry.
I know, I'm sorry. But Andras Viški, it's a play, this I Killed My Mother, let me just tell you that. It's a play about a gypsy girl who, she's actually the daughter of a gypsy Roma and then Hungarian father. So mother gypsy, father Hungarian. And she was abandoned And it's pretty much her life from the age of 6 to 18. And with her muse, it's sort of like I like to think of it as a kind of reverse Dantean play, in that the main character is a young girl, not Dante the boy, but a young girl, and her muse is a boy who is a year older than she is. You know, so when she's 6, he's 7, and then at one point during the play, you know, he's killed. And anyway, it's a story. It's based on a true story, but it's also very poetic, extremely poetic. So liberties are taken.
Wow.
You know, and again, he writes on the text. Andras is a really Beckettian writer. His master was Beckett. He's an extraordinary thinker, writer. You know, his story is that his first memories of life are as a prisoner, because when he was 1 year old, his mother and the 7 children, and he's the youngest, were brought to a camp outside of Bucharest. His father, for preaching in a church in Romania, was put into solitary confinement for 5 years. So this was a 5-year ordeal that they didn't know. They thought the mother was dead at one point. They didn't know whether the father was living. The mother and the 7 children were together, but it was some of the children were in very ill health.
Right.
And so he writes about that experience in Juliet, this other play that I directed,
Wow.
which is a kind of Jobian play. It's, you know, her dialogue with God, and I think of it as Jobian, but, you know, again, a woman.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
which is interesting and quite fierce, based on his recollections, his own life experience. I mean, he didn't actually meet his father survived, but he met him at the age of 7, re-met him. I mean,
Wow.
he knew him when he was 1, but not much, you know.
Right.
So it's extraordinary story.
Unbelievable formative years.
Under
just-
Ceausescu, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, it's very exciting. And I'm going to Romania. Then after I killed my mother, I'm going to Romania, to Cluj, which is the Hungarian theater in Romania, to direct a Chuck Mee play. And Chuck Mee and I are very good friends. And actually, I introduced him to Andras, because Andras is the associate artistic director of this theater, which has been voted the best theater in Romania.
Wow.
It's the Hungarian Romanian. So there's a lot of subtlety about that.
How are they, you know, I've spent some time in Bucharest, and my immediate impression, and we're running low on time, so I want to get the answer out.
Yeah.
My immediate impression was this overwhelming, heavy, despite the fact that they're not communist anymore.
Right.
There's just, you can feel this oppression. Just walking the street, it's like concrete. How are they about receiving the arts?
There, you know, it is, I mean, you can see where things still have not been fixed, you know, the roofs that are just, you know, from that time.
Of course.
Abandoned, you know, just
But I mean, socially
let go.
and
Well, I mean, there's more, but of course, I haven't been doing any work in Bucharest. I've been working in Cluj, which is in Transylvania, so it's very different. And it's Hungarian, which is also very different. And I haven't had the opportunity. I did get to see, my mentor was Liviu Ciulei, and he died just 2 weeks ago.
I'm sorry.
You know, it was, I mean, he was elderly, 89, and we knew that it was coming, but, you know, what a great, great loss, you know, because he was the one who made the Romanian theater. Because of him, everybody else came through, Lucian Pintilie, Andrei Serban, Andrei Belgrade, all these great Romanian directors, extraordinary Romanian directors, were directly influenced by what Liviu Ciulei did in the Romanian theater. He won an award at Cannes for a film. He was a set designer. He was an actor. Extraordinary person, and he was my teacher at Columbia. And then I assisted him once at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis on the Bacchae, when Garland Wright was the artistic director, also another extraordinary director. So I got to be there in my time at Columbia.
Right.
And he was my mentor, and we spent, you know, every day for 9 weeks together of that process. And so
Last question, because I'm out of time.
Yeah,
But is there anything in your future other than directing? Or is acting and writing? I mean, writing, I would
Writing, yes. Writing.
Are we going to see a play?
Oh, could be. Yeah, I've got a Whitman project too. I've got.
What is that?
Well, that's the thing that my company has done, Compagnia di Colombari. It's called More or Less I Am. And Oscar writes about it in the program, that it talks about it being astonishing. But it's basically, it's springs from Song of Myself that Whitman wrote in 1855, when the country was, you know, really polarized and couldn't find any way to have discourse. And I've been working on this piece, and it's pretty special.
Wow.
We've performed it now 2 years in a row in itinerant ways, you know, in different spaces around the city.
Right.
And we plan to do it again next year.
Wow, fantastic.
To get
Corinne, thank you
inside
so
of it.
much for
Absolutely.
coming. I could sit and talk to you forever. I mean, I already feel more educated and certainly more refined and cultured. And I see you got the red tie memo, which is always good.
Yes, absolutely.
Karin Coonrod,
Yeah.
fabulous director, and need I say more. Thanks for joining us, Stipko Live. Sorry we ran a little long here. We'll see you next time.